Please note the content discussed in this episode may contain sensitive topics and themes. The topics of mental health, women's health, and suicide may be triggering for some individuals. Please seek professional help if needed and if in any distress. This episode also contains adult language and explores sensitive content. We aim to approach these with empathy and respect. The views and opinions expressed are solely ours. They should not be considered as professional advice unless explicitly stated. Please proceed with your own discretion. So we've all been there. Waves of sickness, having no motivation, crying uncontrollably or not feeling anything at all, acting impulsively, and or finding unhealthy ways to numb the incessant pain. Some days are easier than others, but on the hard days you forget those even exist or ever will again. Could you even imagine if we roamed around all day looking on the outside the way we feel on the inside? People walking around all broken and then being told just to suck it up and smile? For so many of us, specifically in the Black and Brown community, the struggle is real. Welcome to another episode of Ride or Die from Teens to Prosecco Queens, the podcast where all you badass queens and kings who support us go to learn, grow, heighten, and enlighten. I am your host, Teresa, and today I have the utmost privilege to introduce my guest, who is a remarkable individual and a real queen. Please help me in welcoming Raquel to the show. Raquel holds a special place in my heart as one of my closest friends and soul sisters since we met in Catholic school in the Bronx as children. Raquel has been an unwavering support system for me and my family, and we have spent thousands of hours of our lives together laughing, crying, and at times doing a little arguing. For over 2 decades, Raquel has worked tirelessly serving the Department of Education in New York City, specifically in the South Bronx, as an elementary school teacher. Her unwavering spirit, dedication, and compassion is definitely a blessing to all of the young minds who have crossed her path. Raquel has seen and experienced her share of inequities in the system and how falling through the cracks happens way too often, and how the importance of having the right systems in place can combat those inequities. Raquel, please introduce yourself because I know there's a lot that I missed there.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Yes, hello everyone. This is my first time on a podcast, and I have to say I do feel a little nervous, but really excited. I am an avid podcast listener, so this is really cool for me. So yeah, I've known UT for God, 30 years?
30 years. Yeah.
Yeah, which is
over 30 years.
insane. That God, I feel old.
But we look good, girl.
We look good. We look good. Thank you for that beautiful intro. So yes, I taught in the South Bronx for many, many years. I have the privilege of now coaching teachers throughout the Bronx, specifically the West part of the Bronx, think Yankee Stadium, that area, High Bridge, which is also considered, a very low income, high poverty, a lot of people who are on drugs, a lot of shelters. So I have seen the gamut of the devastation here in the Bronx. It's been a very difficult but rewarding career, and I hope that I continue to serve the community that I live in and that I love. So that's my intro.
And I can see it being rewarding specifically because it's, sometimes I think sometimes that 1 out of 10 makes you go, this is worth it. I could even imagine if it was even if it was just 1 out of 10, 1 out of 15, I could just imagine that, seeing that change and watching these kids grow up.
Oh yeah, I have students that are adults with their own kids now, and it's incredible. I have also had parents who just came in as immigrants, don't speak English, and tell me, I see you and I envision my kid being able to do what you do. Being that I'm a first generation born Latina woman, I know
most importantly, by the way.
Yes, most importantly,
we forgot to mention that.
And I am fully bilingual, which I'm very proud of now. I don't think I was when I was younger. I was ashamed of speaking the language, and now I'm like, thank God my parents enforced that on me because it wasn't my choice.
I remember that when we were younger. Yes, you
it was
hated
embarrassing.
That. Yes.
I hated it. I was so embarrassed. And now I'm like, wow, I I feel very fortunate that I speak the language. But yeah, it's what keeps me going. It's what keeps me motivated is serving the people that mirror who I am. I can really connect with people in that way, and that's something that you can't learn, right? It's
Yeah.
an experience. And so my life has been of service to others, really. And sometimes it's hard to believe I'm going on my 18th year doing that.
Yep.
Wow.
I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, wow, it's been so 18 makes sense because I was thinking it's like
Yeah.
20, but no, it's close to 20 years because I remember when you got your degree of sorts, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
Raquel is also what I love to say, a lifelong student herself.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. One of the things that I love is learning. I'm like I don't want to say a nerd, but kind of, because I'm really into just constantly learning things. I know all kinds of useless information. I love it. Right now, I'm currently obsessed with everything artificial intelligence and aliens, but that's always been the case.
That's
But
always been the
now,
case.
that's always been the case. But now it's like everyone
Real.
talks about it and
It's
it's
like
real.
real and it's here.
I feel like I'm in a matrix because people are like, especially us millennials, were like, well, okay, there's aliens, but I still have student debt and I got to pay this bill. So
Amen.
it's like, okay, I've been waiting for this my entire life and everybody's acting like it's nothing and I'm
Like it's
pissed.
nothing.
I'm over here like, come and take me away. Like,
Yes,
take
yes.
me away. But yeah, I am a lifelong learner and I do enjoy school, which is weird. People mostly don't. But school is way too expensive. That's a whole other topic here in America.
Whole other topic. That's a show in itself.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Raquel is here for a very specific reason too. Not
Hmm.
just because I love her, because I do. She's my sister. But that is to discuss the plight of mental health in our Black and Brown community, how our own mental health has been challenging through the years, how the educational system fails to spot these signs at a young age and doesn't have the resources available to tackle these issues, the stigma around getting the help we all need, and if there is any hope on the horizon for all of us and for our younger children. In a world where discussions surrounding mental health are gaining momentum, it's crucial to shine a light on the unique challenges faced by Black and Brown individuals. Mental health struggles affect everyone, but the narrative varies across different communities. Did you know that depression and anxiety are often experienced at higher rates among Black and Brown individuals? And we are trained to feel embarrassed and ashamed by very real afflictions. Sadly, the legacy of silence surrounding mental health has left an indelible mark on us. For many, seeking help has been a sign of weakness, and the mere act of acknowledging mental struggles has been buried under layers of societal expectations and cultural norms. We're also going to dive into the notion of mental health as a luxury within colored communities.
Hmm.
For far too long, the pursuit of mental well-being has been considered a privilege reserved for those who have the time, resources, and support. So if you happen to hear our episode with Diane, which was a couple episodes ago, and if you haven't, you should go listen. We talked about how the stigma and abuse from generational trauma manifests itself in all areas of our life until we learn to break the cycle of shame instilled in us. Raquel is here to expand on that convo because we know in the Brown community, mental health, abuse, and trauma are taboo topics and not discussed. And we are trying to break those ideas. And I think, Raquel, starting with that, we know specifically that we have our own stories of mental health struggles since we're little. And I say little, meaning mine started when I was about 13 and did not know what it was. There was no explanation for it. There was, you're crazy. You know,
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
remember our eighth grade teacher, I hadn't slept for about a week from my anxiety. It was so bad. I wasn't eating at all because it became health anxiety. It was so bad. And nobody knew what was wrong with me. Doctors just kept saying, maybe she's allergic to something. But
I
so,
remember.
yeah. And that terrified me to eat anything. I was
Hmm.
so skinny. I was like, I wasn't sleeping. I was skinny. I looked like a skeleton. My eyes were all sunken in. It was terrible. And our eighth grade teacher said to me, um, do I have to worry about you? Do I have to call your parents? And I was like, no, it's okay. Because I remember thinking my parents knew, but nobody knew what was wrong with me. I didn't know. I was terrified to sleep. I was terrified to eat. I had no idea what was going on. And this just manifested itself in so many different ways. And this went on for throughout my entire teenage years. I'll never forget my dad said to me specifically one day, he said, am I going to have to put you in the nut house?
Hmm.
I was 14.
Yeah.
I didn't know that I was having anxiety and panic attacks, that was my body's reaction. Not till I was damn near 40 did I go, oh shit, maybe it's because at that time they're telling me I'm moving to New Jersey. I'm moving out of the school I know, my friends, my life, my whole everything that I know is being moved out of from what I was raised in. Of
the
course,
unknown.
that's going to give you freaking anxiety, right? Of course it is.
Absolutely.
But that wasn't a thing when we were younger. There was no such thing now as a panic attack back then.
And what was anxiety? I don't even recall that word.
Right, right,
I don't even remember it being used.
right. It wasn't. And it was
This
never a
is
thing that they told me either. And they said, oh, maybe it's a panic
no.
attack. Now you go in and go, oh, I'm thinking of having a heart attack. Nah, it's just a panic attack. You're good.
Hmm.
Back then it was 1,000 tests. Oh, she's fine. She's just making it up.
We have the language now, which is so
Yes.
incredible. And that's something that I admire about the youth. Sounds so old yet again. The
But it's
youth,
true though. The youth,
they know exactly they know the terminology.
everything.
They connect with their feelings. I'm just like so inspired by them, honestly, because I still struggle with being as open, and I think that I'm pretty open, but even then I feel like young people are really paving the way.
Yes.
And that's I'm really excited to see what this generation, the youth, again, anyone under 21, the youth, right?
Yes.
What they're going to do with that because they're really motivated to change and to like they have compassion. They have like I don't know, people say a lot of things about the youth, but being that I am in quote the worst of the worst, I guess, I
Yeah.
see also the best of the best in
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
right? There's lightness in the shadow, and if we don't have hope for the youth, we might as well just say, all right, let's
Screw
end it
it.
all now. Exactly.
Screw it.
We have to, exactly. So
That makes sense in what you're saying too. When I think about Natalie and her generation, I think a
mhm,
lot of it has to do with social media, right? Because it has that good
yeah,
and that bad, but it's that being able to feel like you're not alone.
right. The connection.
The connection. Holy crap, somebody in a whole nother country is feeling this. Somebody who could be right next door is feeling this. I don't have to feel that this is a stigma on me. You know what I mean? It's still, don't get me wrong. I mean, there's still moments where you feel shame as yourself because you go, why is this happening to me? Right?
Right.
As an adult, when I have a panic attack, anxiety attack, and then it turns into that health anxiety, which used to be called hypochondria.
Oh, that's right.
Yes.
Absolutely.
It used to be like, oh,
That
you're a
was.
hypochondriac. And it's like, no, but this is my body actually reacting.
Right.
So when you don't know what's going on with you, you're going to think you're dying. You're going to think everything is a thing. Right. And it's just some people are, and I'm going to say this with air quotes, lucky enough to not go to the health anxiety because that is the devil. When I tell you, there were days that I'd be on my hands and knees crying and praying to God to stop it
Mhm.
because my brain, I felt like I was losing my mind,
Yeah, you were
you know,
spiraling.
spiraling. It was that
Mhm.
bad because I couldn't stop what was going on. And it took a lot of grounding to be able to really do that. So it's like there's so many techniques now. And because of that, I think people now, kids now specifically, into adults now can say these are techniques I can use to stop this. I can feel better about this. I know what triggered me.
Right. The fact that they use that language or say, oh, you're being toxic to me, or you are
Mm-hmm.
not doing this or that. I mean, I can't imagine a world where, imagine if we would have had that opportunity to speak like as frankly to our parents.
Oof.
I mean, my parents are boomers, okay? They are immigrant boomers. My mom had me when she was older,
Yes.
and the mentality is be grateful,
Yep.
don't complain, and just
You
keep
know
it
how good
moving.
you know how good you have
You
it
know how
compared to other people.
exactly all the time. So you
Yep.
live with a constant, you're living in a state of smallness,
Yes.
right? Let me not take up emotional space. Let me not take up physical space. Let me minimize myself,
Yep.
right? Because that's how I know I grew up. I know many millennials grew up like
That's how
that.
we grew up. That's exactly how we grew up.
Not
Yeah.
the youth. They're out here and it's incredible. But yeah, I want to say in terms of my experience being a first generation born person here in the States, I remember beginning to struggle with anxiety at the age of like 9. That's when it started for me.
Mm.
And it happened, I remember, we went to Catholic
Yep.
school and I would be like, why don't my parents ever come to church? I just remember
Oh.
they never wanted to go to church. And I'd be like, okay, but we're supposed to be going to church. All my friends are going. This is a thing. And I remember I asked my parents, hey, can we go to church on Sunday? I think it wasn't even so much the spirituality, but because, the group thing to do,
Of
like, oh,
course. Of
your
course.
friends are going in their parents, and I wanted to be down with that. And I'll never forget my mom was like, I'm not going to no church. And I was like, why? And she's like, I don't believe in any of that. I just send you to that school. You're lucky you get to go to that school for that education and discipline.
Right.
And my dad, like, he was like, oh, there's no heaven or hell. What are they teaching you? There's reincarnation. Maybe I was your mother or your husband in a past life. How do you say that to a 9-year-old that's been indoctrinated in Catholicism
Right.
and then say, oh, I could have been your husband? Like, what? I'm here thinking, okay, we're gonna go to heaven. I'm gonna see my parents and my family
Right.
and friends. And they're like, sorry to break your bubble, but no, it's an endless cycle of death and pain and coming back to this shithole. And and that's really when it begins.
And I can see how that would trigger anxiety.
What do you mean? And so I will never forget. And I was just like, oh, so this is all meaningless. I remember feeling apathetic about life for like
Yeah.
2 months. I was like, if I'm just gonna come back, then what's the point?
Right.
And I want my mommy to be my mommy. I want my dad to be my
Of
dad.
course.
I don't want to be his wife one day or his friend or his
Right.
dog.
There was no way to explain that a little bit better.
No, it was just very thrown at me. My mom at least didn't go there. She was just like, I don't, this is not my thing. But my dad had to be so extra with it. But anyway, that's when the anxiety began. I remember specifically, and I was 9 years old. I remember. And I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And also, just to be frank about everything, a lot of mental health illness runs in my family, like legitimately, including suicides on both parts from
Yeah,
my
we've
mom
had
and my
that talk
dad.
before. Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
so it's like I didn't find out about certain things until I was much older. They sheltered me from that. But I just remember thinking to myself, I'm not supposed to talk about this.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot bring this up. This is like the worst thing I could do. And the only time I remember my father crying would be missing his parents would be like if he was drinking, he had to be
Mhm.
intoxicated. Like he would never show quote weakness.
That's right.
My mom, I never saw my mom crying. She was a hard ass, as
So
you
was
know,
mine. Oof.
hard ass.
Yeah.
And my
Yeah.
mom went through it in her life, through it.
Yeah.
She's been on her own since she was 17, my father 16. So for them, they're like, the hell are you? What do you mean? Like, you can't have anxiety.
That's right.
I
That's
didn't
right.
know what was wrong with it. And me, my coping mechanism was overeating,
Mm.
overeating.
Yep.
And just it was I just remember having insomnia,
Yeah.
not knowing that was insomnia, right?
That's right.
And always trying to do something to be distracted, whether that be television or the radio, um, being with people. Like I couldn't stand my thoughts. I couldn't stand that just being. Like that was not it for me. So I journaled a lot. Then, of course, unfortunately, but fortunately, whatever it depends on your perception, I got my period when I was 11.
Yeah.
And it's been hell since. No, but at 40, I could still say it's been a fucking disaster for me. My hormones went crazy, and unbeknownst to me, I struggle with PMDD, which is premenstrual dysmorphic disorder, and it is like PMS on steroids.
Yeah.
And I have also, and I say I have because it's not something that just goes away. I
Right.
have major depressive disorder and also anxiety. So I began medication a year and a half ago. And I say it very proudly now because for a long, long time, I thought about it. And anytime I would mention it to like my mom, just to see what she would say, she would get angry with me.
I could see that. Yeah.
I didn't understand. She'd be like, what are you depressed about? There
Yeah.
would be times where I just remember feeling like the weight of the world. And because I am a learner, because I like to know everything that's happening a little bit too much, of course I was consumed with climate change. Remember, I became vegetarian because of the
Yes.
animals.
Oof.
Forget it. When Forks Over Knives came out, I was
Do you remember? And this is a real quick caveat
yeah.
because I was at your house. We were about 14
Mhm.
and we saw the Oprah about mad cow disease. Girl,
Forget
I
it.
didn't eat beef for 15 years.
Yep.
15 years after that.
Wow. It actually probably was good that you didn't. For your heart health.
That
But
reminded
damn,
that, that
could
what
you
you just
believe
said
that?
reminded me of that. It was
Now you
that thing where we do, yes, where we OD.
it's the next level. That's what I'm saying.
There's no chill, there's no in between.
There's no in between.
Right.
I was losing my shit at a very young age, and it just got worse when I got my period because my hormones are dysregulated. I have something wrong in my brain where, and my hormones that still to this day, scientists, doctors, whatever, they don't even understand PMDD that well.
Of course
Just
not.
like just like endometriosis, just like all of women's,
PCOS,
yes, all of
hypothyroid,
this,
anything
yes.
that we have hormonal, they have
I
no
don't know.
freaking clue about.
They don't know. And I did all the holistic things. I really did. I tried it all. I'm not even going to get into it because I'm not a medical doctor, practitioner, and we're not going to get ourselves in trouble here. But I am currently on Zoloft, and let me tell you, I am still a person that struggles with anxiety. I have sad spells, but I no longer have the suicidal ideation. I
Yeah,
don't ruminate. I don't have like the crazy insomnia like I used to. And I can't believe that it took me this long in my life to finally accept being on medication. And it was because of the shame.
that's what it is.
I
It's a
felt
shame.
guilty. I felt
Yes.
guilty.
Yeah,
And I am privileged to have health insurance because I work for the city.
that's right.
And I cannot imagine all of the barriers that a lot of people have just to see a doctor.
You know what it
Forget
is?
forget medication.
It's no secret in the brown community that mental health checkups, mental health well-being is considered a luxury instead of a
Mhm.
necessity.
Oh yeah, it feels like a luxury. Getting
It
somebody to
does.
talk to me, even like a therapist, I had to have a nurse practitioner. I didn't even know how to do all of that just to get medication.
Right.
And it was like so hard just to get to speak to someone that's licensed and knows what they're talking about and who believed me when
Oh,
I told them, because that's another thing.
that's something I've talked about a bunch of times in these episodes is that exact thing is
Hmm.
people to believe you. You're lucky if you get
Yes.
that one person that says, I've heard this before. I know about this. I hear you. I'm listening. Let's figure this out. It's so
Yeah.
rare. It's
I
hard.
God bless the doctor that helped me that day that said,
Amen.
you deserve to be on medication. He said I deserve it. And I,
That's amazing.
right? It was
That's amazing.
beautiful. And so now I advocate for that. And yeah, sometimes people look at me like, oh, she's again, quote, a loony or she's weak. We all that stigma still comes with it. I personally feel that there's so much strength and beauty and vulnerability. And I think that
Yeah.
I'm really lucky to be in a space where I can speak my mind to friends, family, and not be ashamed anymore because I was feeling like less than. I felt, man, I can't believe that I had to take this route. And of course, my anxiety brain was looking up at all of the side effects
Oh,
and
of
all of the
course.
negatives. I was fighting
Oof.
myself not to take it,
I know.
fighting
I
myself.
know.
And then the doctor was like, that's exactly why you need it. I was
But
like, you're right.
I read a quote and it says this. It says for most first generation brown parents, mental health, and by the way, let's not just say first generation, because my parents are not first generation. And this is the same. This goes exactly with what I was saying about my dad earlier and my parents when it came to therapy. It says mental health is related to damaging films like Silence of the Lambs or Split or even the Joker movies that showcase mental health issues through people that are dangerous, that are crazy, that are
Hmm.
murderers. They do not see that mental health is something everyone has, that everyone must take care of, the way we all have to cut our nails, eat food, eat food. I'm saying it like two different eat food, shower, the way we all have to sleep at night. And they cannot imagine that their own feelings, the emotions they dealt with as children and now as adults could ever be something as severe as depression or anxiety. And I thought that was
Absolutely.
crazy because that's exactly we lived it in, again, two separate households. And think about this, on top of that, me and you grew up together.
Hmm.
We
Yep.
didn't know that each other was struggling.
No, because how do you talk about that?
Right.
And you feel,
You're
again,
so embarrassed. I thought nobody will ever
yes,
know what I'm going through. This makes me sound crazy. If my parents think I'm crazy, obviously my friends are going to think I'm crazy, and I cannot be
right,
cast out by my friends by being the crazy girl.
right. You never knew about my anxiety at 9 years old and
No,
why
I
and
did
how it
not.
happened.
Nope, did not.
No.
No.
And it's so, so sad that so many of us experience it at such a young age and we don't know what to call it and we don't feel safe enough to go to adults, right? Because
Right.
it's very much the you're to be seen and not heard. And I grew up with that. Like,
Right.
you don't talk about your feelings, you don't express them in that way. It was like you need to do well in school so that you can do well in life and
Yes.
whatever, the American
Yes.
dream, whatever, you
Yes.
know, whatever that is.
There was always take care of yourself physically, don't give
Right.
yourself up too soon. All those things that
Oh
we ended
yeah,
up doing anyway,
the
which now
virginity.
I look back now and I'm like, yo, all of that was trauma responses.
Oh, absolutely.
Every way we acted out, everything that we did was trauma responses. And we grew up in Catholic school. And don't get me wrong, you know what they say about Catholic school girls. But however, regardless of that, I know I can say I lived up to that. You not so much, actually. Unfortunately, I wasn't very proud of it. I laugh now when I think about it, but I'm like, oh my God, like what was I thinking? But it's because I was raised in where there was no connection.
Yeah.
So you kind of crave connection and you want that attention and connection any way you can get it. I know
Yes.
now how unhealthy that is, but it took me 20 something years to figure that out and a shitload of therapy that I paid for. You know what I mean? Like that.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I'll say I paid for, but I was blessed to have health insurance to pay
Right.
for, where a lot of
Right.
people do not have that.
Correct.
My parents, even if they had insurance when we were young, I don't know if therapy was on that. It would never have been a thing, I think, even covered on insurance when
I
we were
would
younger.
never. Would never even ask that. I would be like, I
No,
would, no, never. Yeah, and the whole thing with that mentality of sleeping around was so bad. And I personally don't judge it because I find that sex is a very natural thing. I just think that
agreed.
you have to be careful with your energy and protect
Oh,
your energy. That's my whole thing.
no,
But
agreed. And we've had those conversations. Oh my
mhm.
God. Yes. Yes.
I think that the reason why I wasn't out there like that during my young years is because I was involved in a very abusive relationship, a very
Yes.
controlling relationship, which that's a whole other episode, I am assuming. Um, and that also didn't help my mental health.
Right.
So that's pretty much why I was kind of, quote, a good girl. But really, I was involved in a very terrible long-term relationship, as
Yes, I do. I do.
very emotionally abusive, physically abusive. It was awful. And so I didn't realize it at the time, of course, but now as an adult, I'm like, wow, that was intense. And you think that you just have to get over things, right? And you just move
Oh,
on, but your body keeps the score to trauma.
yes, it does.
Your body keeps that.
People with serious mental health issues are at higher risk for chronic physical conditions,
Yep.
for a variety of reasons. It could be inability to take care of yourself, the idea that the feeling of being sick leads to actual sickness as well, right? So
Yes.
there's so many different things. The stress and trauma, what it does to your cells. I've said this so many times in other episodes. They change you on a cellular level.
Yes, it does. And
Stress and
that's
trauma
scary.
cause so much damage to your body that not that there are things that don't cause external damage. We understand, we know that. But having consistent trauma to your cells change your DNA,
Yes.
change who you are, and and you have so many chronic illnesses, diabetes, heart
Yes.
disease, strokes, heart attacks, things that over the years compound and compound and compound from all of the stress and trauma that you don't even realize what you're doing to your body. And some things are just you're not able to control, right? Like when you're in an abusive relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and as a kid, it's horrific because your brain is not even developed enough to know
No.
until you're an adult what's going on. So right then and there, it's like you stop developing mentally right then and there.
Correct.
First time you have sex, you stop developing mentally. The first time you
Mm-hmm.
take a drink of alcohol, you stop developing. The amount of things that cause your brain to stop developing on these levels, and then all of that travels through your entire life. And and it's how we take the steps to notice, not to mention things like PMDD. That is
Mm-hmm.
literally that's not your fault. That is it could be in your bloodline.
Right. And then, like you said, I want to piggyback off of that concept of DNA and how it changes. I do believe that that's why there are generational quote curses or
Mm-hmm.
trauma. It
Amen.
is passed down, and that's energetic. That's not just,
Yes.
it's physical as well.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
and that's why they say we have to do our healing, not just for ourselves, but also for our ancestors. I really believe that.
I read that.
Yeah.
Yes. That's beautiful. It is. Yes.
I think about that and not to get all spiritual in this episode, but
Oh no, please. That's what.
it's been a lifelong journey to finding myself through understanding what my ancestors went through, my grandparents that committed suicide, my family that have mental illness, not just had, but have, and connecting with them in a way where I said to myself, I don't have to feel ashamed because of that. And I send them so much light and so much love. And I think about them in a way where I can honor them. And the way that I can honor them is by taking my medication,
Yeah.
is by talking about it, is by living my life each day with purpose and grounding myself each day like a job. It's not like every day is going to be a happy day, but every day is a purposeful day. Every day is a good day, even on your worst day. And so that's my way of honoring them and also just thinking to myself, how can I help others that experience the same thing, right? And it's by talking about it and being very honest.
Right.
So,
And that's what our ancestors would have wanted, right? That's the whole
yeah.
point. They want you to do better. They want each generation to do better and hopefully get it right. Because at those
Mhm.
times, nobody not only just didn't talk about this stuff, nobody knew about anything about this stuff. This was just
No.
life. It was like you dealt with it, you suffered through it, and if you were lucky enough to have it along, lucky enough. Oh well, English is escaping me. But if you were lucky enough to live a long life, that was a blessing.
That was it. Yeah. You have a roof over
Regardless
your
of how
head,
hard it was a
you have
blessing.
food. Yeah, that's it.
It's
And
like
there's
now we strive for more. We strive for internal happiness. You know what I mean? Versus that those external factors that we always seem to look for. It's like now we know that it's that
Mhm.
internal, that's that real internal happiness. That's what's going to, and whatever how in whatever form that looks like. It could be you on your medication and doing for you, putting your priority, you're making yourself a priority. That's what's important. For somebody else, it might look something different.
And I did therapy for a long time, and I want to say it helped with me identifying certain things, but it wasn't going to help my PMDD. I needed to,
No,
and that's something that I had to come to terms with. I realize now more than ever, you don't tell a diabetic not to take insulin.
that's right.
You don't take
That's
somebody
a
with
good
high blood
point.
pressure not to take their medicine,
That's
right?
right.
We as humans, we are susceptible to all kinds of illnesses, but yet mental illness, hormonal, all of that has always been so taboo, and it is the foundation of who we are. And I just think that there's going to be a point where it's going to be the first thing that we talk about versus just the physical. Because when you talk to a doctor, it's like, oh, what's ailing you?
Yes.
And I know sometimes like my doctor, he'll be like, "Oh, how are you feeling? Any depression?" And very nonchalant, like, "Oh,
Yes.
have you had water today?" You know?
Right.
It's like, yeah, I'm still on my meds. I'm a little better. Okay, great. Right? Like people don't really want to get into it. Now is a time where more people are exploring that, especially in the Black and Brown community. But it's still a stigma, and I can attest to that
Yep.
being in the schools and seeing the community. I've seen parents who would do very well with having a therapist, having access to just the basics, and it's just not, it's awful. The fact that you have to wait 4 or 5 months to get seen by any kind of practitioner and then get half-ass treatment because you're on Medicaid, it's just not acceptable.
It's
How many how many people don't die? I had kids, students that their teeth would rot out because they couldn't get an appointment to see a dentist. How do
that's
you have 900 kids in a school and one counselor?
that's a damn shame. That's a damn shame.
And this is why teachers become the counselors, not just for the children, but also for the parents.
Right.
And I think that that's why there's so much burnout in the inner cities. People don't realize when you are dealing with so much trauma, a collective
A collective.
trauma,
Yeah.
it stays on you.
Oh my God. Yeah.
It sticks to you. I know there would be times where I would come home and I just wanted to sleep and sleep and sleep. You have kids telling you, that kids that are in shelters, children that have been raped, children that the only food that they eat is while
It's
they're in
in
school.
school.
I would have a little refrigerator and
Yeah.
I would put in any extras and then I would put them in their backpack. Kids who, they would come in smelling like weed every morning and they're 6 years old. It's because their
Oh,
parent, and this is before even the legalization of recreational on. I'm talking about 10 years ago.
Yeah,
And it's just really, really sad that the Black and brown community, and I want to speak for the Bronx in particular, New York City, it's a struggle, and there's so much discrimination. There's so much shame. We're stigmatized. I feel like individuals are very hesitant to seek help openly or even discuss mental health struggles.
for sure. For sure. Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for this platform because maybe somebody will hear this and say, well, maybe I can take medication,
Yeah.
or
Ask
there's
for
a
the
lot
help.
of
Ask for the
ask
help.
for
I
the
don't
help.
feel right. And, I can't just sleep it off. I can't just shake it off, right? I
Hmm.
can't just do the things that I was told as a kid to do. Oh, no, you're fine. Just go exercise. Don't get me wrong. You know me, I'm an advocate. I love exercise, right? Exercise helps
Yeah.
your mental health and your physical health. But now it's not only the thing for everybody, right? There's so many things that are going to help one person that may not help the next. And you're never going to know that until you drop that shame of, I need this kind of help. And even if it's not because you're suffering from PMDD or depression, or, I don't suffer from depression on a regular, like clinical depression, but everything that's happened to me in the past 2 years threw me into a
Hmm.
depression.
The
Threw me into a
grief.
severe,
That's
the
right.
grief threw me into a severe depression, to the point that there were moments, and I'm going to be very candid about this. There were moments I would be driving my car and thought of crashing it into a wall.
Yeah.
And the only thing that stopped me was the thought of my children at home.
Yeah.
And
And
it was about twice that happened. And I said, holy shit,
yeah,
this
it's
is
scary.
real. And this is
It's scary.
scary.
It's scary. It's scary when your mind goes there, and not just your mind, but your heart, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like
Because
a very real thing.
there's no, and even me talking to a therapist who's fantastic. And I've talked to different therapists over the years when I felt like I've needed it. Other times I didn't need it, and things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I've had people tell me recently, and I know I told you, so I'm not going to say specifically who, but I've had people tell me recently, oh, so you talk to a therapist. This is ignorance. Oh, so you talk to a therapist. So then obviously it's not his problem. It must be your problem. And you must be the one that's sick.
Yeah,
No, I'm the one doing the healing.
correct.
I'm in therapy. Why? Because the person who should have gotten the help didn't get the help and now caused me to need extra help.
And the thing is, we need community, right? Like that's something we're lacking. I want to
Yes.
say not just in big cities, but throughout the country. Like unless you're part of a small
Here too.
town,
Here too.
or
Yeah.
unless you're like part of a religious like community, or you feel safe in some form or another where you can rely on others and be vulnerable, we're very much isolated, right?
Yes. Yes.
Think about, before it used to be like women were supported. They had a tribe of people, right? They had the
Right.
they had the elders. They had this. Now what? You're a mom.
Yeah.
It's hard. And most women that I know, they're just like, I wish that I had people to help me, like other people. And we don't live in that world anymore.
No, when they say it takes a village, it really
It
truly
really
does.
does. And
Because it's
it's
not
so
just to
hard.
raise kids, it's to raise each other.
Yes.
It's to literally physically raise each other, energetically raise each other. And you're right, we don't have any of that anymore, where you can
No.
feel that not that I don't feel like I have my little tribe of people that I can go to. And like I said before, and I've told you, I told my sister, I have been blessed that I have had people that have sat and listened to me, including you,
Mm.
scream and cry, and the why
Yes.
me's and the God whys. And on top of the thousands of hours I did it myself. And we're not just talking about recently, we're talking throughout all the years we've known each other. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And that we've been able to have each other as a sounding board when we've needed to both do that at times, through the happy and the sad and the frustrating and the funny as hell and all those kinds of things in between. And I think that specifically, there is not enough of that, especially in the Black and brown community. And I think a lot of that too, if you notice, there's so much freaking animosity.
Yes, the don't trust anyone, no new
Oh,
friends, fuck the haters. Like, I'm just
yes.
like, oh my, what haters, number one? And secondly, why are people being like that? Like, I don't understand. I sound like such a hippie, but like,
You've always been
I
a flower child.
don't,
I've always said that.
I'm just like, why can't we just all get along? I don't understand. Like, what? I don't understand what jealousy is.
Yeah.
I always feel so happy for others when I see someone
Yes.
that maybe looks better than me. I'm just like admiring versus like, I can't stand this person, or
Right.
like I just don't understand where as a whole, as a collective, we've become so cynical
Yeah.
and disassociative. So
And that's what it is, and that's what happens in our communities a lot too, in the color communities, because it's about protection. I think a lot of it. You have
don't
to
tell anyone.
don't
Don't tell
no
anyone your stuff. Don't
no
air out your dirty
never
laundry.
air out your dirty laundry.
Don't trust your friends, only your family, but then
That's
don't
right.
trust them either.
That's right.
Don't let them
Don't
know that you're doing well because
And
they're going to be
don't
haters.
let anybody in your house. Don't you this is so and so who's your quote unquote uncle, but don't
Yep,
let them in your house. Well, why
that's
are
right.
they around me then? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's things like that. It's this constant barrage of hypocritical thinking.
Yes.
And it's always, so it leaves you, it's gonna leave you mentally unstable.
Yeah.
Because you can't trust anybody.
It's chaos. It's complete
Chaos.
chaos. And when you grow up with the idea that you cannot trust people, and the first people you can't trust are your parents,
That's right.
how do you, it's cyclical, right? You're going to be that person. There,
Exactly.
a lot of these parents that are going through shit, man, they want the best for their kids and they want the best for themselves.
Of course.
But it's so difficult. And it's not to say that there are folks that aren't, what's the word, deserving or whatever, but that most people are deserving of the help. I really do believe that. There's people that don't want the help, so I'm like
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
But there are so many people, man, that if you were given the opportunity, they would take it in a heartbeat.
Of
But
course.
but it's not.
And they
And
still would feel that shame. They still wouldn't talk about it, but they
yes,
would take it. Let me
yes.
ask you your opinion on something, because I don't know that I've ever actually thought about it. We know personally the issues that come with being in the Black and Brown community as a whole. Just our
Right.
names alone put a target on us,
Hmm.
right? From everything from resumes to applications for housing, or a loan,
Yeah,
right? They
you
look at
kidding
our
me?
names and they're like, put that shit aside. We're not going to a Rosario or Soto. Hell no.
Hmm.
They're going on the other pile. You know what I
And
mean? So
I
my
can't put my address on my resume as soon as it says Bronx. Are you kidding me?
And it doesn't matter that you have freaking 2 master's
Hmm.
degrees. You know what I mean? That
Hmm.
shit don't matter. It doesn't even
No.
go through that. So my question to you is, why do you, your own personal thought, why do you think we'll say Caucasian, but when I say Caucasian, I mean the
White
non,
people.
yes, white people, but I guess I was trying to be a little more, why I was saying Caucasian? I was thinking,
Caucasians come from the land of Caucasus, which is like literally these highlands, like
thank you. Okay,
by the
that's what,
Kazakhstans,
yes,
around the stands.
that's what I was thinking, because I was trying to think of the best way to say it, because
The white
I was trying to
people.
encompass all the people that
Listen,
are not Black and brown.
we understand when we meet, okay, European or European descent,
Yes.
right? There you
Yes.
go.
So yes,
Because
then
you can
white
be white
people
Latino, you could be white
like
this,
me.
right?
Right.
You could be white passing, whatever. But
Right.
we're talking about the European descendants.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. So what was my question? That's hysterical. No, okay. So
I brought the caucus. I started talking about the highlands. I've actually looked it up to see where
it is.
the
So why do you
geographical
think
area.
that they don't have the same? Now I got it. Why do you think that they don't have the same, or that we know of the same type of stigma around mental health? Now I know a lot of Italian people, and they're very close to Spanish people, and they're like, "Oh no, toughen your ass up. Oh no way, you are fine, right?" So we know a lot of Russian people ain't walking around thinking they need therapy, right? And again, I'm just talking to people that I've spoken to myself, right?
Hmm.
It's certain experiences. So, but is it because they just happen to live in communities, a lot of them, where it's just more accessible, so it's less traumatic? Like, what do we think it could be the reasoning behind this?
In my opinion, in my humble opinion, it has everything to do with your social class, not so much
Mm,
race.
okay. Yeah,
Now, granted, we know that white people in America, their ancestors, not all of them, were the colonizers.
that's right.
They came here and, whatever, I don't have to give you a history lesson, but once
Some
a
people could
stat,
use it.
for some people could use it, but that doesn't come free. Um,
Look it up.
Look it up. That's right. I'm thinking to myself, established white people, and not just white people, but think about the established people. It all comes down to money and education. A lot of white people in this country who have been here for generations are established.
True. True.
And you know that someone from Portugal or Italy or whatever, when they're first generation, they're very different 3, 4 generations later. You become
Very true.
Americanized.
Yes, you
I
do.
even feel Americanized now.
Oh,
When I
yeah.
go to my father's country, my mother's country, I have a connection, but it doesn't even feel like it's my own. So
Yeah.
I could imagine a few generations after, you're American, you're
That's
established,
me.
you're
That's me.
right.
Completely.
It's a
Completely.
different situation. So a lot of white people, because they have had the advantage, the financial, the housing advantage, the education advantage, they don't have as much trauma.
The generational wealth.
Yes. And
Mm-hmm.
so if you think about a Black family, a Latino family, an Asian family, whatever, that has had the same privileges, they too won't have all of these issues. This comes down to class and
You're right.
poverty,
Yeah,
education. And of course, we know that the people who are poor tend to be the people of color. Now,
that's right.
you talk to white people in Appalachia, you talk to people in the South, and they'll be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you don't understand. It's the same exact thing." It has
Yes.
to do with class, it has to do with education, right?
Yes.
And so that's something that I want to say as I've gotten older, I've understood. Unlike before, I was very much like, oh, it's just us that are suffering. But I've been living in a bubble in a way, right? Like, I don't see a lot of poor white people or uneducated white people because I'm in New York City.
And I'm here in
And,
Jersey, and we sure as hell
right,
don't see that.
right. But guess what? When you go to the South, when you
Yes.
go to the Midwest,
Yep. They're so poor, so much poor. They are
yes,
poorer than like
yes.
anything we've ever seen.
Exactly. And they too struggle with all of this. It's the
Yes.
same thing. And so I'm opening up my mind to the idea that yes, racism is real. Yes, there's been so much that has happened in this country that's unfair, and we continue to feel the pain of that. But just by us becoming educated and doing the work, we're starting to level the playing field. We are becoming very much like the quote unquote white people that have been here for a long time.
Right. We
Now,
just got years to
granted,
catch up.
right, it takes a long time because guess what? A white family, they've had and again, when I say white, I'm talking about the
Yeah.
people that have been here a while, who are educated, have good jobs, live in
Right.
suburbs or whatever.
Yes.
They
Established.
established. They have had the
Established.
opportunity to save up for their kids' college. So guess what? If I'm a kid and I'm living this life, I get to go to a nice suburban school. I have my friends. Yeah, I have my own shit to deal with because that's part of the human experience. We all suffer from something. And I go to college, I come out, I have zero debt. My dad works with these people, I'm connected, there's
Mm,
networking. Then it's like, oh, nobody handed anything to me, but you already started off
yeah.
at a better place. Unlike many of us who we started off at zero.
That's
And
right.
so it's like we're playing catch up. But generations from now, I'm starting to see so many people of color just like doing the damn thing. And I realize like, wow, things are getting better. It's still shameful. This country is shameful in my opinion
Oh, it is.
for
And we've had
what it
those
is.
conversations in depth, like
Yes.
for sure.
But it comes down to that. That's what I'm thinking.
So, what role do you think education can play in bridging that gap?
Well, I honestly believe that schools need to be more community based, meaning that they need to reach out to the actual community, like all the business
Mm,
owners, like there's such a disconnect, right? Schools are supposed to be a haven where children, parents can come and not just learn, but also find camaraderie, do things together, right? Understand each other. And in the black and brown communities, you don't see that as much. And why don't you see that as much? Because when you're impoverished or you don't speak the language or you feel less
of
than,
course.
you're not showing up.
No.
You have other fish to fry. You're thinking about getting food on the table. You're thinking about housing. You're thinking about all other things. And just the lack of education. You can't do better if you don't know any better.
That's right.
And so it really comes down to helping parents and connecting with them. And I really believe that the best way to connect with people is by having people from the community who have, quote, made it connect with those parents. And I find that one of the most incredible things that I have done in my career has been able to connect with troubled families, help them, and they feel like they can trust me. Earning people's trust is a gift. And
Agreed.
how did I do that? Because I understand the community, because I am part of the community.
Yeah.
And we've lost that. You have,
You were
you
raised in
know,
the community.
yeah, you have
Yeah.
people with, who are afraid and don't know how to connect culturally, economically, and that's problematic. Visibility is important.
Yeah.
And, people don't want to hear that. They're like, oh, it doesn't matter what color or whatever. You're right, it doesn't. It has to do with experience.
Right.
And if I'm a white person from, I don't know, Idaho that's lived in a rural area and I come and I teach in the Bronx, you know how hard it is for me to connect if like I've had a very
Yes.
different experience. Now I'm not saying that you can't connect. I'm not saying that,
I
but
mean,
it
we
is
all saw
much
Dangerous
harder.
Minds.
Yeah, I mean, and even me, I've always taught in the inner city. I don't know what it's like to teach in an affluent neighborhood.
Of
I'd
course.
probably be a fish out of water,
They would love
right?
you. They would love you.
I don't know.
They would love you. They'd be like, this is wow.
So I do believe that some of the factors include creating community, and having like social services accessible to the schools so that it's like a point of interest,
And that it's
right?
not so hard to reach. Those social
Right.
services are so, and it's that's everywhere. And I can even tell you that from personal experience,
Mhm.
me even now dealing with certain social services that you're like, why are these not accessible for anybody? There's
Like
it's
all schools should have nurses and doctors and dentists and places where
yes.
parents could go for understanding curriculum,
Oh,
understanding
yes.
parenting, even like there should
Parent
be,
classes. Oh,
yes, education for the parents. We
yes.
are not born knowing everything. And
No,
because we don't have the tribes that we used to have back in the day where everybody lived together, it was the grandmother, the mom, the aunts, everybody was together, like protecting each other and
right.
helping each other.
Right.
It's not like that anymore. Everybody has to go to work.
Do you know when they make you take a parenting class is when you and your spouse are going through a divorce?
That's sad.
That's when you're required, for the most part, to take a parenting class. Don't you think that that should have been something done
Before.
before?
Preventative. We need
Yes,
preventative
preventative measures.
care, physical
Yes.
and mental, addressing the cultural context, looking for mental health professionals and fostering like an inclusive understanding, and just really connecting with the experiences of Black and Brown community,
What about
honestly.
what about education itself? Is there a way that education itself can be maybe tailored to better address specific needs or mental health to begin with, right? Because like we were just
Uh-huh.
saying, if you teach, the more you know, the better you do. So even starting kids at a young age and saying, listen, maybe not just health class, right? Maybe, because health class is kind of like, oh, here's your toe, if it hurts, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like on a basic level, you know, is
Yes.
is it something to that it can be tailored in the curriculum to draw more
Yes.
attention to it?
So I could proudly say that at least the Department of Education in New York City is a very progressive educational platform because we do something called social emotional learning that's now in the curriculum and embedded in all schools.
They're
And
doing that here in Jersey as well.
and
That's I'm
it's
so
some
happy to hear that.
and it's something that started right before the pandemic from my experience. And I see such a tremendous change. There's also mindfulness that children are doing in schools. There are just various books and resources that people are talking about it in your morning circle every single day,
Oh,
starting in pre-K and 3K. You get to tell your classmates and your teacher how you're feeling,
that's amazing.
like, and not be shamed for it. You're sad, and then you can explain why, and sometimes there won't be a solution, but you get to express yourself and you're valid. And that's something that in my 18 years, this is very recent. We have
Yes.
literal books tailored to that, where if a child is grieving for the loss of a loved one, depending on their age, there's a book for that, and you put, like, it's incredible. Now a lot of people learn about this progressive education. They're
I
like, oh, that
know.
should be put on the parents, but they're not doing that.
And
Not
they
many of
and
them
they
aren't.
can't do what they don't know either, right? We are
Exactly.
exact examples of that.
Yes. We need like content that's relevant, relatable, respectful to cultural norms and values. That's what this new approach is. And they want to call it the woke curriculum or whatever, but honestly, I want to call it the humanitarian curriculum because it's addressing so much more than just, okay, now you're going to read and write. Here's your state
Yeah.
test, and it's so much more. It's so much deeper. And I am very proud of it. I am so proud of how progressive it has become, granted, we're worlds away from it being perfect. We
Of
don't have the
course.
funding, but every teacher that I know, and I visit plenty of schools, they're all trying their best to implement these social emotional learning practices to the best of their ability. And it even helps them. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
we're becoming aware of the language. We have like actual grids with language of feelings and learning how to self-regulate. Could you
That's
imagine?
I have trouble with that still. I still have moments where I go, holy
Yeah.
crap, you really overreacted and you need
Yes.
to learn that. And imagine if we had the tools as kids, the
Yeah.
healthy tools, feel it, identify it, and let it pass.
Correct.
In Natalie's school, in my daughter's school, one thing that they started doing, and for the little one too, they have what you're saying. And in my community, it used to be predominantly white. It's not
Hmm.
anymore. It's very, very much, it's literally Parsippany is the most diverse in Morris County, one of the most diverse in all the surrounding areas because everybody's moving here. It's like a little city itself.
Yes.
So in the schools, you have first generation children coming in from every country that speak no English, and they're all learning teachings. They're doing all of the development that you're talking about as well with the kids because they have an actual class. Like they'll send my son will have to do books that they'll send to read. And in my daughter's in high school, she's specifically, they started just last year or her freshman year implementing days that they can days that they can take as mental health days in school,
Wow.
yoga
That's
classes,
incredible.
breath work. I mean, some stuff that I was like, could you imagine
Wow.
taking yoga and gym class?
Oh
What?
my goodness. I would have loved that breath work and meditation. I would have been like,
Meditation, that was the other one.
yeah,
Meditation in the
mindfulness.
middle of
Yeah.
school. I mean, does my nap in English class not count? I guess not.
Or staying in the bathroom for a whole period so you could
Right?
miss out
While
on.
I'm smelling the cigarette
Exactly.
from somebody else. You know
Uh-huh.
what I mean?
Yep.
Exactly. It's crazy how far it's come and still how far it has to go. And
Yeah.
it's a blessing, I say, to have teachers like you in there doing that hard work because listen, my kids are hard, and that's just two of them. I have trouble regulating my emotions, let alone trying to regulate theirs and try not to lose my shit every time they lose their shit.
And that's the hard part, right? Is
Oof.
yeah, I remember coming home and not having the patience for anyone or anything because my emotional bandwidth was done because I had to give that to the children and to the parents, and it's not easy. So and that's why I've passed my baton to the next educator now,
Yeah.
and I help them. I'm like, listen, I find that when I connect to teachers, I don't go in there just, off of college, like, oh, let me tell you how to do this. No, I've lived it, I've
Yeah.
experienced it. And then they're like, oh, okay. But yeah, we need more like comprehensive support, more networks that's going to cater to the diverse population. I remember the first time I was able to bring home a letter in Spanish from my mom when I was in high school.
Wow. High school.
I went to public high school and, we went to Catholic school when we were younger. And then I ended up going to public school in the Bronx and it was horrific, really sad. Like, no, not enough place to like
I passed
sit.
your high school when I went in the other day. Yep.
Yeah, there were 4,000 people at the time and it was one school. We had the metal detectors. It was like going through TSA before
Yeah.
2001.
Mm.
We had to take off our shoes, put them in the bin, show our ID, and go through metal detectors. And we all had to line up. And if we didn't make it by the time the bell would ring, they would shut you out or you would stay in the cafeteria like caged animals. And that's where everybody learned how to play cards
Of
and
course. Of
stuff.
course. You were in juvie.
And all exactly. And the guards would literally sell the kids weed.
Oh God.
Yeah, it was like New Jack City. I'm not gonna
Yeah.
lie. I mean, it was crazy. We weren't even allowed to use the lockers. We had to
Survival
carry
of
our
the
stuff.
fittest.
Yeah,
That
I
ass
saw one.
Darwinism. Like, yo, the
Yeah,
weed, the
yeah,
the the wheat get weeded the hell out. Oh my
yeah,
God.
man. I mean, and this was walking distance from where I live, and I remember to this day, I rarely wear red because of all the initiations. I
That I
remember I
remember.
stopped taking the bus because I remember people going in with steel toe boots and stomping kids out.
Yep.
I mean, I've seen it all. I've seen the gamut.
I remember seeing a girl get her face slashed when we were about
Yeah,
14 because that's what they
yeah,
would do for initiation. They were telling us
yep,
don't wear red in the trains. It was like, don't put on nothing that's gonna, that's going to draw attention to you. And it's like, and that's when my parents were like, listen, if we got the means, we got to get you the hell out because it was
yes.
it was terrifying to them. And, and in that sense, I remember, my dad being like, they're raised in the Bronx in the 70s, the 60s and the 70s. And they're like,
Right.
and that we know what that was like, right? Like,
Uh-huh.
and it's
Uh-huh.
like, and then you're still, but then you're like, everything is like we say, cyclical, everything comes back around. So even when
Yes.
things seem kind of chill for a bit, everything comes back around the way it is. And I think that unfortunately, there's too much still negative stigma around one survival of the fittest, right? Like you
Hmm.
got to protect yourself, you got to survive, you got to do what you got to do to survive, and there's not enough resources and help to help parents help their
Right.
kids. You know what I mean? If you're
It-
struggling to put food on the table and you're working three damn jobs, your kid is raising themselves.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I am also to just add into that, I think about just culturally speaking, the mentality in New York City, especially when you're from like the hood.
Mm-hmm.
I can say that for myself. You don't want to come off soft. You don't want to be a
Oof,
punk. You
that's right.
you don't want people to know that you're struggling with something because it could be used against you. And forget it, especially being a man. Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine how difficult. I always say the hardest job in the world, in my world, is being a man of color in the hood.
I can't even imagine.
I like it's hard. I have so much love for black men. I have so much love for my Hispanic men, my brown men because they really, really feel it.
Yeah,
They can't let down their guards.
that's
And
exactly it.
and
And
yes,
yeah,
women, we have had societal expectations from the beginning that are just near impossible to live up to. But men now in our society, they're going through it too. And
yeah,
that's a whole other conversation as
that's a whole
well.
other
That's
conversation
a whole
because
other
mental health
conversation.
in the male color community
Yes,
is, and obviously we can't speak from experience in that sense, but we come from men of color
correct. Oh
and we
yeah.
know how they were raised. I have
Mm-hmm.
been married to men of color.
Mm-hmm.
I know how they've
Same.
been raised and how they have helped destroy themselves
Oh, absolutely. And
because they are men of color.
they will gaslight themselves.
Gaslight themselves, destroy
Yes,
themselves,
yes,
self-sabotage themselves, and
correct.
then say, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
What happened? It's just
Yes,
what I know. It's all that I know. There's nothing wrong with
right.
that, right? And that's again goes all the way back to all of that consistent bogging people down and trying to keep people down by
Yeah.
not getting them what they need and the help that they need. Oh,
Man, I gotta say, I now that I'm like speaking about the progress that I've seen in my career, I'm actually feeling even more hopeful. Like, yeah, things are bad, I'm not gonna lie, but there's a lot of good still. And I do see that children are way more mature and awake than I ever was. Like, forget it.
oh
And
yeah,
they're
for sure.
so much more empathetic and caring. Even the pandemic alone changed humanity and it
Yeah.
changed the hearts of so many people. And it's really the adults that are fucked up.
Oh God, yeah.
It's the adults.
Oh,
The
please. And
kids,
all the pandemic did was fuck us up more
exactly.
and make them, and don't get me wrong, and when I say make them better, I mean in certain aspects, because we know it just
Right.
it had a global impact of hell. But in that sense, it did do a lot of difference to our kids in the way they accept things in their lives, the way they now can see things in their lives. And it created a vacuum
Yes.
for experiences and for needs that we did not know that they needed either. Like, I guess I'll say TikTok, but I don't mean that they needed that. What I mean is just an extra way to connect
Yes.
with other people that didn't have anybody before when they were being by themselves. So
I
it's
agree.
interesting. I'm glad to hear from your perspective that there is hope for it.
Yeah, there is. Even, you're always going to see on the news or social media the worst of the worst. But I'm on the
Yes,
ground, and yes, it's bad, but it is better. The fact that it's in the curriculum and that kids feel free enough to speak about their feelings, man, that's huge.
that's huge.
And for people
Agreed.
not to shut them down, but it's an expectation now. That I can't wait to see in another 20 years what these pre-K children that I have the privilege of working with, who they're going to be. And I know that life is full of tragedy and hardship, but there's just so much good. Even though people say New York City is sinking because it's just, it's like they're
I
like,
know.
oh, it's like, I mean, I read the news and I'm like, really? I mean, geez, they make it seem like this is New Jack City right
This
now.
is
They
for
really
real.
do.
It's like Sin
Like,
City, right? Like some
yes.
crazy shit. Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
like, oh, come on now. Like, no, it's bad, but it's not worse than what it was. I mean, I live here, okay? It's bad, but it's not that bad. I can sincerely say, and I'm in the schools and I
yeah.
see what's up and I see the quality of care that administration and teachers they're giving to the schools, to the children, to the parents. It's not perfect because we're imperfect.
Right.
However, be hopeful, be aware that things I believe are going in the right direction. It's going to be slow, but we're getting there.
I
So,
think that
yeah,
if children are lucky enough to have like-minded educators like yourself, then that is going to be exactly the push that this world needs to continue in that direction. Because you see so
thank
many
you.
times you have some that just you're like, how are you a teacher?
Oh yeah, oh
How
I
are
see
you
them.
in the school? How could you possibly have done this? Like go dig out the garbage somewhere. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
that's
do
what you should
something
be doing. Do
else.
something else, you know?
I
And
have literally told teachers that. I have literally said to them, listen, I don't think this is working out
yeah,
for
yeah.
you.
You gotta
I
have a
think,
temperament and a
yeah,
whole personality. It's not something I have. I don't mind kids. I don't mind doing stuff with kids. I don't mind whatever, my own kids, but I don't have the temperament or the emotional ability, I feel, or the mental stability to do that job and not constantly take it home and not feel like if someone else's kid is acting crazy, me to be like, oh, and I worked in a daycare with babies and I was fine. Give me a baby any day. I was fine. They start to get bigger and start to talk. Now you're pushing it with me. Now I'm like,
yeah.
now we get a little crazy. But my love, we are basically at the end of our show.
Wow, this wasn't as scary as I thought it would be. Look at
No,
that.
no. And I am so glad. I'm so blessed that you came on. I really am. I know we talked about it for a really long time and then we finally got together to do this. So would you do at some point another episode with me if you wanted, if you wanted to?
I definitely would. This was fun and thank you for allowing me to speak freely and giving me the platform to have a conversation with the audience about mental health, education, our personal lives. It's a beautiful thing. And for those of you listening in other parts of the world, hello from
Hello.
Bronx, NYC here, Teresa from New Jersey. My God, they probably hear the accent. It's so funny.
Exactly. Think about that. The accents. It's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
being able to share this experience that I have with people that I love and respect is such a blessing for me
Yeah, this has
because
been cool. This is what it's about. We're building that community. We're holding space, not just for one another, but for the people out there, you guys in the ethers.
that's right. And you guys,
Listening to this.
you heard it there. That is the perfect way to end this episode. We're
Yeah,
holding space for all the people in the ethers. If I
in
got
the
that right.
ethers. That's right.
That's right. So, like I say every time, guys, if you would like to be a part of a future episode, be on a future episode, have any ideas for a future episode or something you'd like to hear talked about, please feel free to email me at proseccoqueenspodcast@gmail.com or DM me on IG at Prosecco Queens Podcast. We are on YouTube at Prosecco Queens Podcast and newly on Pinterest at Prosecco Queens Podcast. So you can hit me up on so many different platforms. We are on all of the podcast platforms as well. And again, my love to you, Raquel, as
Thank
always.
you for
And to our
having me.
audience, much love, Prosecco Queens. See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Please note that even if you feel alone, you are never alone in your struggles. If you're feeling overwhelmed or in crisis, please remember that help is available. Please call 988 to reach a trained professional on the National Suicide Prevention Line who can provide guidance and support. Reach out because you deserve the support and assistance that can make all the difference.